All right, there we go. Hey, everybody, welcome to today's webinar. Welcome back to those of you who are join us regularly, and to anybody who's new, we're glad to have you here today. We have a fun class today on diversity of plants for pollinators that I'm looking forward to hearing about. I'm just going to stall for a second and wait for our participants to get logged in. And in the meantime, I'll go over a few notes for anyone who is new to our online classes. For those of you who are new, welcome. As I said before, we're really glad to have you. This program we're based out of Virginia, so this is geared towards zone 7 in general for gardening purposes, but we've been having more and more people log in from across the country, so we're happy to have you. Just keep in mind this is zone 7. It's geared towards zone 7, so if you're in a different climate, just bear that in mind. For anybody who has questions during the class, you'll type those into the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring that, and then Peg will be taking questions towards the end, so we can do some Q&A at that point. If you have any technical issues or any problems during the class, feel free to send me a chat or a Q&A. I'm setting up the chat right now so that you guys can contact me. And I can try and help you out. We are recording today's call, so if you have to jump out halfway through, you can check our YouTube channel or send me an email after the class, and I will send you the link. That usually becomes available 24 hours following the end of the class, so you can look for that tomorrow. For those of you who don't know, now we'll jump into it. For those of you who don't know Peg, which I know most of you do, she works primarily at our Fair Oaks location in our annuals department. She does a lot of our class instruction and has a lot of experience in her own beautiful garden that she's been working on for many years. And she's a great resource for anything pollinator related, vegetable related, honestly, a lot of everything. I know, Peg, you instruct. I learned a lot from you, and you definitely are a great source of information. So always happy to have you for these classes, and I will let you take it over and go ahead and dive in.
Thank you very much, Sally, and good afternoon, everybody. And it is a beautiful afternoon, and we will be talking about pollinators, which is a fun thing to do because it's something you need to do, but it's really a lovely, lovely day. The sun is shining, but it isn't hot yet. So, but anyway, the sun is shining. Grab your hat, grab your gloves, and this is my last chance to advertise before fall for me, probably. Okay. Advertising, it's stuff that I use, okay, so it's not really, in my opinion, advertising. Foxgloves, I wear these all the time in my garden, okay. I like to be able to feel the plants, and I can do that with these, and there's nothing constricting in them. I've been wearing them for years, and they're always a little difficult to find because they're never hanging with the gloves, okay. They're in a lovely basket right now in the breezeway here at Fair Oaks. So put on your gloves. When I'm working with wet stuff, I buy a package of those inexpensive gloves and slip over it, and then I can still feel things. I really don't like to work with my bare hands in the soil. I know some people like to do that, but I'm not one of those. I prefer to use the gloves because my hands are in the soil a great deal. We are going to be talking about pollinators. I do have a large garden. I have a number of areas that I have enough sunshine to grow a lot of the perennials that I will be talking to you about today. But when you are thinking of pollinators, it isn't just perennials and annuals. It's the trees around us. It's all of the shrubs around us, perhaps the ground cover. We don't stop to think. I was just looking at a lovely little brochure that Kelly in marketing is working on, and she warned me that it's not finished yet, okay? So, for instance, the eastern swallowtail has the most interesting caterpillar. And I said to her, I rarely see that caterpillar, but it's always so interesting. And she laughed and she said, well, Peg, remember, this is where the caterpillars are. They're in the trees, primarily. And primarily, I have a lot of tulip poplar. And I know they're there because I have a lot of swallowtails. So the ash, the birch, the cherry, the hickory, the poplar, the willow, serviceberry. I have a lot of serviceberry, amelanchier, and tulip poplar. That's where the caterpillars are. And they're up high, so you just don't see them very often, okay? So don't think of just the things that I'm talking about today. And I am dwelling primarily on perennials, but a few annuals too, okay? I want to show you, before I start talking about the plants, a couple of areas that I have used in the past. I am in the process of reworking some of these areas and looking forward to a kind of a new presentation later on. But if we bring up the first picture, this is an area that I enjoy tremendously. Now, my whole property is really geared toward pollinators. The trees, lots of different kinds of trees. Oak trees predominantly, but a lot of others, a lot of understory trees, a lot of shrubs, and the things that are great as pollinators. And then down into the area where I use the perennials. This happens to be above a brick wall. And then there's a planting bed beneath it. And I can sit on my front porch. This is all in containers in this area. And I have a hummingbird feeder there also. Although I don't think they'd really need it, I put it there anyway, you know, and you have to really take care of it. I didn't put it up until I decided I'm going to take care of this. Every 2 or 3 days, I'm going to clean it out and refresh it and wash it and so forth. But this is all in large containers. And it is predominantly right here in this picture, salvia. And I'm going to show you some of those plants because there's some new ones out there that are fantastic. And what you're also looking at cascading out is a carex grass. Okay, no, it doesn't. Yeah, it sends up a bloom, but not the blossom that you're thinking of. And then there's also Euphorbia ascot rainbow. And there's Nandina, and there's a lot of other different things in that area. But I'm just trying to show you that even though I may show you an area that's pretty large, that you condense it or that you mix it with what you already have, even in a small townhouse garden. For instance, one of my granddaughters, I've been helping work with her in her little townhouse backyard. And in an area where she has sun, she's putting in some of these salvia because they're good for the whole season. The next picture is a close-up of one of that Rockin, R-O-C-K-I-N, Rockin series. And there's several colors and several types. You know, they've just named this, the growers, the Rockin series, okay? And this particular one has been an annual for me. I don't think you can trust it to be a perennial in this area, but a lot of the salvias are. Okay, if we come back to me for a minute, Danny, I would like to see if I can bring up this. This is not part of the Rockin series, but I think it may have been part of the breeding process. It is a large salvia. It's called Black and Bloom. And I think that this one, although I've not grown this one, I've grown Black and Blue, which is truly perennial for me. But this is such an interesting bloom. Let me see, get it right. Can you see if I get it against that solid wall over there? What an interesting little blossom it has. It's two, there we go. Ah, that's better. It's a very interesting little blossom there. And the hummingbirds absolutely love it. So that is Black and Bloom. Then we have what I mentioned to you as the relatively new, the last 2, maybe 3, but primarily 2 years, the Rockin' series. And it's difficult for you again to see there. I've got it up against the solid wall, and you can see how interesting the blossoms are. This plant gets very big. It gets 2.5 to 3 feet tall, but it's wonderful in a large container, or it's wonderful in the ground. Both they thrive. But what it does is bloom all season long. Every now and then, when you can tell that it's really finished throwing out its little blossoms, and the calyx stays a very dark color, which is very interesting. But if you snip that off, then it will continue to bloom. And when I say snip it off, the proper place to do that is just like right here, just above the leaf structure. You can see that here's the new thing that's going to come up and form the next blooms. So when you deadhead, you want to come all the way back down and deadhead right there. And for me, it was in bloom all summer long. And it comes in different colors. This was that beautiful magenta, but there's also a really true purple here that you can see. Okay, very, very interesting. So this is a new salvia, new to us, but more an annual. Okay, now if we go into the perennials section, then we can come up with a lot of other very different salvias. Okay, this one is Arctic Blaze Red. It's Gargantia Arctic Blaze Red. And this one does not get as big, and it is a perennial. It's probably 2 feet, maybe a little more than that. And the spread is probably 2 feet, but it's absolutely beautiful. Again, it has that wonderful little lip that hummingbirds absolutely love. So that is a great one, okay? And then we have also, this one I love is very, very blue. I'm trying to remember the name of this one. It doesn't have it on it, unfortunately. But it is one of the salvias. It is one of the Rockin' series. It's the blue one, okay? It's not Mystic Spire. Mystic Spires is also a great one, and I highly recommend it. So go for any of that, but go to the annual section. And then again in the perennial section, you will find many, many varieties of salvia and some real beauties. And fortunately, this is a perennial that has a long season of bloom. It's very interesting. You can see that it's got blossoms here, but it has more coming. These little buds will come out after this is finished. And you don't really have to deadhead it because it stays a little purplish, but you can if you wish. And then when it's completely finished, which is a good month, okay, or longer, you go in, and again, when you deadhead with this, you go back to where there are shoots coming up. You see the babies coming up, and they will form the next blooms. So you deadhead here, and you can get as many as 3 flushes of bloom from these salvias, okay? And this particular one is one of my favorites among the perennials, and it's a Nemorosa, Caramia. It's very upright, and so it's very different than some of the others. So you have a contrast with some of these, okay? And they work well together if you're presenting a bed that has a lot of salvia in it, okay? Let's see if this one is different over here.
Are all the salvias, they're all full sun?
Pardon? Yeah.
They're all.
Now, full sun, but let me explain.
Yes.
When we talk about full sun, we're talking about a minimum of 6 hours. That does not mean to say that you've got to have full sun all day long. Okay, the hottest sun is afternoon, but nevertheless, I've grown these well where I get the full morning sun and some of the afternoon sun. And I'm glad I picked this one up because it told me the name of that rockin' blue suede shoes. Now, isn't that fun? Blue suede shoes. So that's the name of the blue salvia that I showed you. I absolutely love that. So the salvia section in the annuals and the salvia section in the perennials will present you with a lot of different varieties, many more than I have here, okay? So explaining through all of that. Okay, Danny, I think we can bring up the next picture, okay? Now, another area of my garden, which really is a very large area that I have devoted to, and this is a steep bank off of a retention pond. And I planted it all up to keep it from having to be mowed, okay? It's too steep to safely mow. And also to prevent runoff, you know? And so it's a long area, pretty deep. It's probably 30 feet or more deep. And it's a little difficult to maintain because it's so big and I don't have a gardener. The one thing that people sometimes when they talk about meadow planting, they don't mention maintenance very much. But you are going to have weeds and you will have to deal with them. And so when I talk about this garden more in depth, I'm going to talk more about maintenance because I've had to learn to deal with some of that and without a gardener, okay, and without all these wonderful volunteers that people have in these public gardens where you look at these gorgeous places, but you've got to maintain, okay? So every now and then I will go out and I will pull the worst of the weeds from one area where I want things to continuously reseed because you can't mulch heavily. The only time you can mulch is when they're in bloom before they are throwing their seeds. Because if you mulch after they throw their seeds, then you're covering them too deeply to get a good result from seeding, okay? And all of the things that you're looking at here in this picture, except the butterfly bush that's on the side, all of those are plants that have reseeded in that area. The daisy type that you see is a Rudbeckia, and it is a biennial, so to speak. The popular one is Endless Summer, and that one has seeded all around, and it has seeded different colors, and it's very, very interesting. I even have to thin this sometimes so that other things like the tall white flower is a Cosmo, and they will seed themselves around too. And sometimes you can even add seeds. Most of these fall in the fall, and they will stay there and come up either in the fall or in early spring. Or you can spread your seeds even at this time of the year, okay? It's not too late for some of these things. I have larkspur that's coming into bloom right now, which I don't have a picture of. Okay, and in the next picture in this same area, I have a lot of echinacea. I love it. It is a native. Not every one of these plants are native, but a lot of them are. Particularly with the annuals, there are not a lot of native annuals that have long bloom periods, okay? But they are wonderful pollinators. I can attest to that. My favorite among the echinaceas are the pink ones. They seed prolifically, but they're very easy to pull up. And staged with that, in that area, on that bank, is an ornamental grass, which has done beautifully. It is a clump former. It hasn't reseeded a lot for me, and it's Pitacetum Carly Rose. Okay. Now, if we come back to me again, Danny, I was intrigued because we sell a lot of varieties of echinacea, and they're absolutely beautiful. And for those who have the space and want to try a number of them, I love the marketing on this. It's called Sixy, S-I-X, Sixy Spirit. And it has 6 of the different varieties of echinacea in here, which I think is kind of fun, you know? So you can even try out the little small guys. They may not bloom for you this year, but they'll be nice performers for next year, okay? So that's a great thing, okay? Now, going forward a little bit more again in that same bank, because this was planted strictly for pollinators. I do enjoy going out and cutting. These things are fantastic to cut and bring into the house too, because I enjoy having fresh flowers in my house. You are seeing the seedlings from that Rudbeckia. You are seeing vaguely, I think, the tall verbena bonariensis. Bonariensis. My daughter calls it verbena on a stick. It's what we think of as a really airy plant. So it can be anywhere in the border or mixed with any of your plants, and it really is beautiful. And it blooms almost all summer long. It seeds itself. You may have to pull up some of the seedlings, but they're very easy to pull up. I don't mind pulling up seedlings when they're easy. Some things aren't, and I kind of leave them alone. Some of the little purples that you see in there are actually an old-fashioned petunia that came from my seeds from my mother's garden that were in that garden as long as I could remember. Now, another absolute prime that's showing up somewhat in there are zinnias. Now, I plant some plants already, and then I just recently went out and put some seeds in the ground of the giants, because I like those really tall ones that I can cut and bring into the house, because when you deadhead these things, they will continue to bloom, and you'll get almost continuous bloom out of these things. So zinnias are incredible plants as pollinators. And in the next picture, there are some other wonderful pollinators. This tall, airy one that you see is bronze fennel. And I love the taste of this, okay? And it's almost like a caraway seed in it that you can have the seeds too. There's also yarrow. And you can actually, if you cut it when it's at its prime, cut some of it when it's at its prime, you can dry it and it stays beautifully. So it's a beautiful dried flower. It's a long-lasting cut flower, but you want to leave some up because there's pollinators too. Now, another one that sometimes we sell, but I don't think we've had it recently, is that incredible Queen Anne's lace. Now, you have to be careful with that because it does seed a lot, and so does the bronze fennel for that matter. But I absolutely love the Queen Anne's lace, and spreading those seeds around is a good thing too. And of course, it's mingling with that echinacea. Now, for me, this is kind of a wild look. It doesn't work for everybody, but this is an area that's probably 6 or 8 feet and at least 6 feet deep. So if you've got a spot that has that kind of space, you can mix some of these things. But it's nice to mix some of those that have a solid flower with some of them that are very airy. And in the next picture, again, on that same bank are lavender in bloom, and my lavender is just coming into bloom right now. And one of the absolute best pollinators, and it's also very important for the monarch butterfly because it's a milkweed and it is a host plant for the monarch butterfly. Okay, and it's one of the best hosts. And when it forms its seed capsule and opens up, it's just that fluffy little white seeds inside, and you can blow on it and those seeds will land and you can get some wonderful germination and new plants from that. So I love it. But I love the color combination here. And then down in the bottom is a gray. I love gray in the garden. It makes everything else look good. And it is a Centellina. And it's probably 2.5 feet tall and at least that wide. But this is when it's in bloom. When it finishes blooming, you shear it back. And if you shear it actually into the top parts of that Centellina, it keeps it nice and thick and dense and moundy, okay? And if we come back, wait, just, yeah, I want to talk to you for a minute about lavender. I absolutely love lavender. It has to have sunshine. So I grow most of it at the tippy top of that bank that I just showed you. And I have a number of varieties in there. And they're different heights and they bloom slightly different. Grosso, Grosso, is one variety. Provence is another one. And there's several new ones on the market. This particular one is called Phenomenal. And it was a recent introduction. This is just a small plant right now. It's very gray. It will get a good 2 feet tall and wide and send up nice tall spikes, which you can enjoy all through that period. And when they're really finished, you can cut those spikes. Let's assume that this has a spike flower on it. You can cut that back and cut just a little bit into the plant itself, trim it back, and then it will send new shoots out from the side and it will bloom again in the fall. That's how I trim my lavender. Once this whole row of it is finished, and we've used it in so many ways, and it dries just beautifully. A lot of people use it in their cooking in so many different ways also. I haven't used lavender that much in my cooking, but I use it for a lot of other things. Do sachets with it. I can't be without it. It's just beautiful. But there's a knack to growing it. Number one, it wants as much sun as you can give it, and it gets probably 7 hours of sun, which is enough at my house. But what it needs most is drainage. And when you talk about plants getting proper drainage, that means that that soil is not going to stay wet for a long period of time. And that long period of time is often winter time in your garden, because people are not out in their garden and they don't realize sometimes how wet and how long it stays wet. And plants that are dormant, which this one goes dormant like everything else, although it retains its gray form, it's evergreen, in other words, it's still semi-dormant and it won't be absorbing all that extra water. So think drainage, raised bed. You can even work small gravel into it to make it drain well. I know that they say putting a small amount of sand into clay makes bricks, but I have definitely added a fair amount of sand and some small gravel and worked it well into the soil at the top of this bank. And I've grown lavender there for years and grown it beautifully. Some of mine is getting quite old. And what I have done is lay down some of those long branches. You could pin it down with a rock, or you pin it down with one of those side pins and then put soil over it. And guess what? That produces another new plant. And some of the ones that I've done it to now are this size. And I did it last year. It's just the easiest way to propagate something, you know. After it's well rooted, you can even cut the stem and move it if you want to, you know. So before we leave this particular topic, let's show them the next one, Danny. Okay.
Peg, was that milkweed you were showing? Was that the Asclepias tuberosa?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't say that, did I?
Okay, yeah, we just had a question about which one it was. Are there others that we sell?
Yeah, let me come back to that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just realized I wasn't sure if we sold more than that one in Virginia.
Let's take this picture. Well, yeah, that's all right. Okay. In the annual section, we carry a milkweed also, and it is the annual one that there's a little bit of controversy over that annual. They really love it, but some people think that it keeps the monarchs here too long. But actually in this area, I don't think that's true. It might be in Florida where they would stay green longer, but they brown off with the frost, and by that time the monarchs are leaving. So I don't think that's a real problem, but I'm not going to get into that controversy. But there are a lot of swamp type milkweeds, and they like some moisture, so that's a good place to plant them. Okay, there are a lot of different types of milkweed in the perennial section. Okay, so it is not just tuberosa. It happens to be that that particular one is the one that I showed you, and it's my favorite. Okay, I love the low growing. I love the presentation of the flowers, and when it forms its seed pod, it's very, very interesting. And then you can just blow it around wherever you would like it to be. Okay, I just thought I've always loved this picture. It's been around for a while, and it's just that beautiful, I think, painted lady, I think, on the zinnia. And really, this is a major attractant. And again, another beautiful butterfly on the echinacea. Okay, yeah, we'll go to the next one, Danny. Yeah, isn't that lovely? Yeah, they're just all over. And then on the next one, the Monarda or Bergenia. This is a plant that's a long bloomer. It's not a clumper. It kind of creeps a bit, and some people after 3 or 4 years feel that it is encroaching upon other things, but it's really easy to transplant or to pull up or to share with a friend, because it is a wonderful pollinator. The bees particularly love this plant. Okay, and then the next one, Danny. Okay, this is a phlox that is the top of the list for me, and it for me is relatively new. Friends gave me my first one, and it's Phlox Gena, Jena. It's a smaller flower than some of the summer phlox, the paniculatas, Phlox paniculata, the summer blooming phlox, some of which can get mildew. I have not had mildew on this one, and we have several out there that are not susceptible to mildew. One of them, the white one, is David, and it's a beautiful plant. Phlox blooms coming up usually in June, and once that initial bloom is finished, again, if you prune it back the way I showed you, cut back to the first good set of leaves, then it will send out side shoots and continue to bloom. So it has a long bloom period. Some people, when they have a nice big established clump, would go out now, and let's come back to me, honey. Would come back to me now. Here's the Gena back here. And it, by the way, phlox is a native plant. I think this is a cultivar, a nativar, as some people are calling it. But some people, let's say you've got a big bushy one of this, will go in and snip with my Joyce Chin scissors, okay? You see right here where there's new growth coming, they'll snip right there, okay? And snip the bloom away, and then the next bloom will come from here and down here. So that's a great way to, but it is a beautiful, beautiful Phlox Vena, J-E-N-A. It's my absolute favorite. And right now, in full bloom in our garden in front of the store here at Fair Oaks, is another absolutely favorite plant. That's Nepeta, N-E-P-E-T-A, Nepeta. And this variety is Walker's Low. Now, soon I'm going to go out. I'm very pleased with how this bed is doing. There is some phlox in this bed. There is a lot of echinacea in this bed. There's allium blooming. There's a beautiful grass that's in this bed. It's mullygrass, the pink mullygrass that comes on later. But in between the spaces, I'm going to plant some verbena and let it just ground cover there, because verbena is a good pollinator also. And when this Nepeta finishes its initial bloom and is no longer attractive, then I will shear it back. And again, just barely into the nice green foliage, and it will rebloom also. Sometimes maybe you can get 3 blooms out of it. And if we come back to me, I think I tried to put these things where I could reach them easily, but I don't think I brought it up here.
The one that I moved it.
No, it wasn't. I wanted to tell you that there's a new variety out there that I'm trying. It came out, I think, for the first time last year. And I love the little name of it. It's called Cat's Meow. And it's the shorter growing one. It doesn't flop at all. And I'm trialing it this year. And so far, I'm very pleased with it. And it is supposed to be very responsive to reblooming also, called Nepeta, N-E-P-E-T-A, Cat's Meow. That sounds like fun, okay? Let's see what else we've got here. Okay, I'm trying to follow along with my pictures. Okay, next picture in line is a reminder, our herbs. And these are the herbs that I have in my containers outside my kitchen door, where it's easy to step out and snip them. And there's parsley, and there's thyme, and there's oregano, and there's sage. And oh, I have to have nasturtiums always, because they're wonderful to decorate with, and your salads and your meats and all that thing, and they're very edible. Okay. Now, included in all of this, I will have various basils. In with that parsley in the front, there's Thai basil, which I love Thai basil. And I've let these go to seed. I've let them bloom, because again, they are major, major attractants when they are in bloom. I like to have enough basil of the various types to use indoors for cooking, but I also like to let some bloom, because they're just so incredible. And talking about the various herbs, this is parsley. In that garden that's on the slope, okay, of the retention pond, I always seed in parsley, so that there's a lot there for the caterpillars, because this is the host plant for the black swallowtail. And they just really can consume the parsley in fairly short order. And so I keep a nice row of that at the foot of some of these other things that I grow there too. I want to be sure that there's plenty of parsley for me and for the caterpillars. Okay, so think in terms of the host plants for some of the caterpillars that you really would like. Okay, let's come back to me again. When I mentioned to you earlier about Verbena bonariensis, this is a small plant of it. You can see how it is. It is a tall and rangy plant, and we call it a see-through plant because you can grow it anywhere in the border and it's attractive. And when the bloom is majorly finished, you trim it back and it just keeps blooming and blooming and blooming. And it seeds just beautifully. Another one that is a perennial that I hope I don't make a mess with. Thank you for catching that. This is an intriguing plant that people may not know. It is a Veronica, but I love this particular variety, and it's something candles. Let me see, royal candles. Okay, but look, it's two-toned. And it blooms for a really long period of time. You can see that it's got some that's in full bloom now, but lots of side shoots that are still coming. So this has a long period of bloom, and it's better to deadhead the old and let the new come fresh. But it is Veronica, and that's about its height, and it will get wider with time. It is a clump former. And to the side there, Danny, maybe you can hand that to me. And this is certainly getting into the annuals now, and not native, okay, but I love the natives, but it doesn't all have to be native. This is an incredible pollinator. Everything comes to this. Hummingbirds, everything. And really can get quite large. In the South, this is a shrub because I grew up with this as shrubs. Nandina, Nandina, and some absolutely beautiful colors. Okay, let's take that back. Okay.
We've had a couple questions on the parsley. People are very interested in the swallowtails. Does it matter what kind of parsley you plant, like curly leaf, flat, any particular variety, or does it just?
I usually plant the flat parsley. I love to have both of them for me for cooking. But I usually, and I don't know that it matters, but most of the time they come directly to that flat leaf, sometimes just called Italian parsley.
Okay.
So that's the one.
We had a lot of questions come in on that. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and ask that. People are very interested.
You can go ahead. It takes a little while, and you'll have to keep your area moist where you're seeding this and watch the germination, because sometimes it takes a week or two for it to germinate, okay? And it is a biennial. It will grow this year and be great, and then next year, a little over winter, it'll go into flower, which you can actually let that flower mature, and it is part of the pollinator system then, and shake the seeds around and keep it going, okay? It'll often reseed itself, but if not, I will always, every year, plant fresh. Every year, plant fresh, because I want to have a lot of parsley. I want to encourage. I love the swallowtails. I think they're beautiful. I love the monarchs, and I want to support them, and I do, because I have a lot of the Asclepias, which is its host plant, and its only host plant. So that's why if you want to help these things keep going, you need to figure out a way that you can plant some of those things, okay? So it's very important. I'm looking for a time situation. I'd want to. Okay. Well, let me wrap up some of this, okay? And I'm not going to be able to get to a whole lot of stuff if I take any questions at all. So let's quickly show. We had a plant release. Yeah, we had a monarch release the other day, and it was such fun. And a lot of the children here and the customers' children just really enjoyed it. And I think they have some plans for Pollinator Week with using some of the caterpillars too. But anyway, this was the inside of the little case that they were in just before they released them. So I'm going to quickly go through these. And this is little Clara, you have to have Clara in this because as a part of the gardening series, there has to be the fun things and to teach the young. And oh my, but you know, it wasn't just the young that were fascinated with this. Everybody was fascinated with this, but that's a monarch that landed on her hand, okay? And it's just so interesting, flick through quickly. That was taken here a couple of years ago. That's the chrysalis, and it's so colorful. And the next one, as it was coming out, you can see it's just come out of the chrysalis. And then the last one is the full-blown, wonderful, wonderful monarch. Okay, great. So hopefully you're going to support all of these wonderful, wonderful birds, bees, and butterflies that we have by planting some of these plants. Okay, Sally, I guess I've got time for just a few questions. I wanted to remind people that it's mosquito season, but I don't have time to go into that. We'll take the questions.
All righty. Well, I'm going to start with question we had the most people write in about.
Okay.
So if people are dealing with more shady conditions, so part shade, full shade, what are their options for pollinator plants? I know there are less, but is there anything that they can stretch into that 4 hours or less zone, maybe 6 hours or less? Do you have any ideas?
Well, yes, of course. Anything that has a nice bloom on it. And of course, the trees are fantastic. They understory trees, the serviceberry, and all those various ones are great, you know. And it's amazing how much shade some of this will tolerate, you know. I'm amazed when it says absolute full sun for the Asclepias, but it'll do fine with morning sun, but it does need some. Of course, violets, that's the early thing for them, but you have to be careful with violets because they can really just go all over the place, you know. No, there are fewer things, and I do realize now that you brought it up that I primarily have brought up things that thrive in the sunshine. There's a lot of flowers in the annuals, but I don't look and see as many in the shade area, and I need to concentrate on that. Okay.
Yeah, well, we're actually working on, for anyone who's interested, and I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but we are working on a natives for shade class, but it's not necessarily focused on pollinators. But
no, see, I'm great on shade plants.
They're
I can talk about shade plants all day long.
I know, yeah, well, and it's such a big topic, so we are doing that. Is a cardinal flower an option? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, absolutely, cardinal flower, and I've got it seeds all over the place, and I absolutely love to see you're stimulating my thinking now.
Okay. Like I remember cardinal flower, I'm pretty sure is an option.
Yeah, but that doesn't bloom till midsummer. Okay.
Okay, got it. So just fill your gardens with cardinal flower for midsummer.
Takes some moisture too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I got a question from someone actually about this plant. I'll ask it because shade gardens are so big. Dina says she got cardinal flowers. She didn't realize it needed wet soil. Could she do anything? Like, does it just need a ton of water? Could you plant it with some that moisture retaining potting soil? Is there anything she can do to help that plant get it more moisture?
It's wonderful. It grows naturally and it seeds itself about in slightly moist areas.
Okay.
Areas not wet.
Okay.
Slightly moist. It doesn't dry out quickly.
Got it.
And if you plant it in an area in your garden that's decent garden soil, just water it well.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Don't let it go bone dry in August when it doesn't rain for a month, maybe, you know.
Okay.
Water it. It's fine. It doesn't require boggy soil. It doesn't require really wet soil. That's where it's happy. Okay.
Okay. All right. We've got a few questions about like basically the nature of perennials, how they work. So I want to get to these because I think this is important, especially for new gardeners. Are the perennials, this is from Joe, are the perennials as flowery as the annuals? Do they have as long of a period of flowering? What would be the difference? Like, why would you choose an annual versus a perennial? Can you address that? I know that's a big topic, but can you talk a little bit about that, especially for some of our newer gardeners?
Absolutely. Basically, perennials have a period of bloom. And the tags that are on them are helpful. It may not tell you everything, but I mentioned some of the ones today. I purposely brought up some that are long blooming, and certainly the salvias fit into that, and this Veronica fits into that, the echinacea fits into that, and by deadheading, you can keep them blooming for a longer period of time. Now, with things like the yarrow that I showed you, it stays beautiful for a month, and then it's going to turn brown. And in this brown state, you can leave it up because it has presence, or you can cut it back very hard, okay? And it's done for the year. But when you cut it back, it still has a presence in the garden. So perennials, depending upon which one it is, either has a period of bloom and won't rebloom, or some of them will. I love to use a lot of perennials in my garden because obviously you don't have to rebuy them every year, and they get bigger and bigger as time goes by. And when there comes a time when you need to split it, perhaps with some of them, never. You could plant a peony and leave it there for years and not have to split it, okay? Even iris, which is a short period of bloom. The German iris are just finishing in my garden, and they're absolutely beautiful. But I call them queens of the garden because they only bloom at this time of the year. So you have to consider that. Where the annuals are concerned, and why would you choose an annual, either for a bedding purpose or to intersperse? As I mentioned to you, the little garden that is in front of the garden in front of here at Fair Oaks, I'm going to put annual verbena in there. Why? Because it's going to fill in and stay in bloom and be a massive bloom beneath some of those perennials, give you an additional force of color. But in that area also, I planted perennials that have a longer period of bloom. I planted the Nepeta. So if you cut it back, it's going to bloom again. So look at the tag, or please ask us questions, because it is a learning process.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like I've talked to David about this. Gardening's like an art and a science at the same time, I think he says, and you learn over time and adjust.
Absolutely.
All right, next question. Is it too late if you're going to plant seeds for some of these? Is it too late to get started?
I don't think so. I just planted some zinnias, okay? I would be happy to go out and plant some more parsley. In fact, I may.
Yeah, that's actually another question. Can parsley survive in the heat of the summer?
Yes.
Is that an issue if you're going to like let it go to flower, or what's because I know it's
the parsley that you plant this time of the year from here, or the seeds that come and grow, they will not bloom this year because it is perennial. They will be beautiful this year, and then they will bloom next year.
Okay.
I let it just go ahead and bloom because it's beautiful. And actually, you could save the seeds if you choose to.
Oh, I wish my condo wasn't so high up because I've got some really great parsley, and I think I'm too high for the butterflies to reach me. Why would they fly up here if they can get something lower?
I don't know how high they'll fly.
We'll see. Yeah, I don't think they're coming up here. All right, next question. Okay, this is a good question. I know your garden has been going for many years. The question is, can you please speak to the time frame for establishing a perennial garden? So if someone starts this year, what's a time frame for saying, okay, my plants are going to be filled in? Is there a time frame, or is it?
Well, usually there is. You certainly can't expect small plants. I mean, if you go out and you plant a quart-size plant, it's going to take 2 years to get not with an annual. I happen to pick up an annual, okay, but this larger plants like this Veronica, Royal Candles, it's established right now. And next year it'll be larger than that. So it establishes right away. The picture that I showed you of the garden here with the Nepeta, I planted 2 summers ago. And those plants, you saw how big they are. They're beautiful right now. And all of the others that you didn't see in that picture are just as big. So you can expect it to look really established in 2 years from perennials. But if you go with the larger size plants, you can expect it almost next year. Okay. So that depends upon how long you want to wait.
Okay.
And now this little Asclepias, which is a perennial, is going to get pretty good size this year. And next year, it'll probably be as big as the one I showed you in that picture. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking to see what we got. A few minutes left, what we can handle. Quick question, since we talked a lot about salvia, are there any salvias that can overwinter in a pot?
You know, there's a very good possibility that the perennial salvias will, but
Okay.
the new Rockin' series did not overwinter, but it didn't
Okay.
overwinter in the ground for me either. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So I am going to encourage everybody, if you guys have issues with your particular plants, send me an email after class. I'll get you in touch with our plant clinic. We have people there who can help you. I'm seeing a few like plant clinic questions. We'd love to help you. We're just not going to have time today. All right, next. Oh, this is a good one. Are knockout roses any good for pollinators?
You know, I don't grow knockouts, but an awful lot of people do. And they are open flowers, single flowers. The doubled roses aren't so good because they can't get down into it. Usually it's the more open flowers that are better. And I feel sure they probably are. You know, they probably,
Okay.
you know, before you get another question, I'd like to intersperse something. May I do that?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
When I was talking about these various things, the salvias have, I'm not going to ever say anything's deer proof, but those are constant questions too. But the deer don't normally eat those. They don't like the salvias. They don't. I've not had them eat the verbena or the veronica, and neither have I had them eat the nandina. So those are pretty secure. I haven't had them eat the Asclepias. That's fine. But I have deer. And I grow daylilies. I grow oriental lilies. I grow hosta. All of these things that are complementary and add to the beauty of a garden in many ways. And I have deer. And I absolutely spray in the springtime every couple of weeks. Then you get into summer, it's the new growth you're after, okay? And follow your directions. And I use Bobex. A lot of people use liquid fence. If you've only got a small garden, buy the bigger thing and get a little spray bottle, okay? So I do have great luck with this. I've been using the Bobex for years. Yes, it smells terrible, but only for a few hours. Yes, you need a shower after you've sprayed it, but I do feel like it was important to make that statement. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. We'll get to a couple more questions and then we'll call it a day. But here's a good question from Alma. Our school's colors are yellow and blue. We've planted many bulbs of daffodils and tulips for yellow, but it's hard to find a true blue perennial. It is. So Peg, do you have any suggestions of a true blue perennial that they could use?
Oof, off the top of my
Anyone
head,
who wants one.
with that. Close to it are some of the salvias, which are great pollinators. It's pretty close, you know, but as perennial wise, of course, annual wise, these salvias are beautiful blue. Okay, not long blooming ones anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's such a rare color to find.
It is.
All right, let's see. Okay, this will be our last question. When you talk about planting in a large pot, what makes a pot a large pot? What's the minimum size?
Well, 14 inches up, okay?
Okay.
Those, looking here, that's probably 14 inches. Those are probably 16 inches and 18 inches, okay? And
Okay.
deep, okay? And
Okay.
it's filled with all potting soil. And by the way, I am having incredible luck. Okay, I'm only going to throw that one at you today. We've got a lot of very good potting soils. But this Fox Farm Ocean Forest, it's got great ingredients in it. It's the most expensive one that we sell, but I am having great luck with it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And the sort of a grand finale, a little wrap up, an annual that I didn't mention that's very attractive, and everybody's seeking this because it is a tip top annual. In fact, there's two here I want to mention. And this is Cuphea, C-U-P-H-E-A, Cuphea vermilianaire, and it's like a little cigar. Okay, they call it the cigar plant too. Hummingbirds love it. And the other annual that they absolutely love is Fuchsia Gartenmeister. Okay, so that was my kind of wrap up for the plants thing. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Peg. It sounds like we should maybe look and see if we can do a class on native pollinators, or not, sorry, pollinators for shade, pollinator plants.
I think that we're going to do a little more research on that.
Sounds like a big challenge, but we definitely have a lot of interest in that. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions after the class, issues with plants you're having, plant clinic questions, just anything you think of, please feel free to contact us. You can either call our store, or you can hit reply on your confirmation email, or that comes to me, or you can email me directly. Tomorrow we will send out a class recording and a coupon, so keep an eye out for that. They usually come out about 24 hours after the class, and we love having your questions. So again, just want to reiterate, please feel free to contact us or stop by the store and visit Peg. She loves seeing you guys. I think that wraps it up. I will do one announcement. Thank you all. I love the little emoji. One of our instructors at our Gainesville store is doing a really fun class this weekend. He hasn't done since before the pandemic, and he's restarting that. It's called Garden Critters for Kids. So if you have kids or have grandkids and you're interested in bringing them to Gainesville, he will actually have animals there. I don't know which ones, but there will be some animals there, and he teaches about the animals and their habitats, and it's a fun class. So just wanted to put that out there, and that is this Saturday at the Gainesville store at 10 a.m. That's it. Peg, do you have anything you want to wrap up with before we close?
That's it. Just there's so many beautiful ones out there right now, so many excellent choices to make, and just take a look at your garden and think, where can I put this? And no, these don't have to be in full sun. Most of them would like to have 6 hours. And we're going to go do some more. I've got a huge garden of shade. You'd think I'd have right on top of that one.
We'll get together as a group and brainstorm and see if we can get a class together
Well,
for you guys on that.
I have a lot of bulbs.
Oh, yeah.
Bulbs that bloom over a long period of time. And believe it or not, they are. I have lots of violets, and believe me, they are. Actually, now it's coming back to me.
Now we're getting a still bee as a recommendation.
I have umpteen of a still bee. Great. I have the sea. You got me rolling now.
All right.
We've got tiarella. We've got carabels. Yes.
So many. All righty. Well, maybe we'll have class part 2. So anyways, for you guys who are interested in shade, I'll get with Peg, see if we can send out some notes, but we are always looking to do new classes, and that definitely sounds like it would be good for us to parse that out and do that specifically. So Peg, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next class. Keep an eye out for upcoming announcements about classes in June and July. Have a great day.